But first to a story that will break your heart. Celeste Manno was just 23 years old when she was stabbed to death in her own home, allegedly by an obsessed stalker. Now her family want real action to be taken against high-risk stalkers and violent perpetrators who breach intervention orders and make the lives of their victims a living hell. The Herald Sun reports today that when Celeste first sought help from police, she was told they could do nothing, even though she'd received multiple disturbing messages on social media from her stalker. Indeed, the police advised her to simply block the individual or shut down her social media accounts as a solution to the escalating behaviour, which allegedly ranged from declarations of love to vile threats of violence. Now, her nightmare began when she showed kindness to a man at her workplace on the day he was sacked. That's all it took. The stalking began and continued even after police took the case seriously and supported Celeste in getting an intervention order. The alleged killer was charged with breaching that intervention order but released on summons. And in the early hours of November 16 this year, he allegedly broke into her bedroom and stabbed her to death. Her mother was asleep in the house and could do nothing to save her child. Celeste's mother, Ms. Morrow, told the Herald Sun she is driven by an immense amount of anger at what happened to her daughter, and she is demanding change to save other victims of stalking. She wants high-risk offenders to wear GPS tracking bracelets that alert both police and the victim when a breach occurs. She said intervention orders give victims absolutely no peace of mind. It's a piece of paper, it's not keeping them safe, and if the perpetrator breaches, it's just a slap on the wrist and they get the opportunity to breach again. Now, Celeste's family are demanding real consequences for those who breach these orders. They want to overhaul the Victorian justice system that failed to protect their much-loved Celeste. A justice system that sadly too often puts victims and victims' families last and instead prioritises the interests of offenders. The family's campaign is backed by Justice Party MP Tanya Maxwell, who joins me. Tanya, this case is just maddening, heartbreaking. This young woman, so bright, beautiful, her whole life in front of her, and I can only imagine what her family are feeling. What are you recommending to try to prevent this from happening to the next young woman?
Thank you, Rita. And look, it's great to be here tonight because I think that this is a subject matter that is not often discussed. People don't want to hear these horrific stories. After speaking with Aggie and learning about the fate of Celeste, this is not something new to me or to my party. We have actually been doing some work on stalking because for me it's an insidious crime that has been happening for so long. And the problem is the police wanting that and needing that proof, which is understandably justified. However, when it was brought to our attention, and of course everybody heard it on the news about Celeste's death, I just really felt I needed to reach out to the family. A young lady who was a very good friend of Celeste, Najia Arel, she is the young girl who started the petition, and that's how we started talking about this and moving forward to where we are today.
Well, there is so much community support. The community is absolutely crying out for something to be done. One of the things you've talked about is behavioural change programs. Is that something that's really going to have an impact on high-risk offenders and how they react to an intervention order?
Rita, one of the most concerning issues around this is that when a victim goes to a police station and they ask for an IVO and they produce their evidence as to why they need it, okay, an IVO is then served on that offender. But where's the responsibility and accountability for that offender's behaviour? There simply is none. And I truly believe that Obviously, there are different grades of stalkers. There are different risks that stalkers will take. So there's a process in this, and we've done a considerable amount of research over the past 2 years, even going as far as to Tasmania, where they have been utilising electronic monitoring. However, just to get back to your point, is that we need to assess the risk level that offenders are going to rise to. That's imperative. But we're also not addressing how to change their behaviour. So when they're given an IVO, often that aggravates them and they escalate.
Well, I know a lot of women are reluctant to go down that path for that very reason. They think it will escalate matters and they'll be even at greater risk than they were before from someone who is obsessed with them.
Absolutely. And I think a part of that process needs to be that their risk of escalation needs to be assessed, their mental health needs to be assessed, their prior history needs to be assessed. And then we need to address the actual behaviour. And how do we do that? Well, there's many ways we can do that. We can have accountability through them having to attend psychological appointments. They can go to counsellors. They can go to behavioural change programs. There are a plethora of resources out there, but we have to address the behaviour. And because it's not, we see them being able to escalate without any consequence or accountability.
Well, that's what Celeste's family said, didn't they? They said, what is there to stop these obsessed individuals from breaching these orders? Because at the moment, it's a slap on the wrist and they're free to do it again. And if that behaviour escalates, you could end up with what we've seen here, which is an absolute tragedy. Now, the state government has ordered an urgent review today, so you've got some action rolling already, which is fantastic. Do you have hopes that that's going to actually have some meaningful change come about?
Absolutely it will, Rita. And myself and my colleague Stuart Grimley and the Justice Party are there to ensure that we will be riding the back of the government to ensure that this does not come to a standstill, that the Victorian Law Reform Commission investigates this. I have been inundated with emails and phone calls from victims of stalking. We will ensure that they put in submissions. So I think that Celeste's mum, Aggie, can be confident that we will push this as far as we can, because this is simply not good enough, and we never want to hear that another life has been lost due to stalking.
We do have this problem, don't we, in the justice system, where victims and victims' families are almost forgotten. There's groups looking out for the interests of those accused, offenders. There's all sorts of attention paid in those areas, but really, who speaks for victims and victims' families? And if you don't have people like Celeste's family who take action like this, really drive the change, it seems like nothing much happens.
Yeah. And Rita, this is one of the reasons I joined the Justice Party. Prior to that, I started a campaign called Enough is Enough. We had little Zoe Buttigieg murdered in Wangaratta, and then we had Karan Chakouti. And I just could not sit back any longer and watch victims' priorities be removed and offenders' priorities being overwhelmingly prioritised over victims. And you're absolutely right. We need to be the voice. We have the opportunity in Parliament to be the voice for these victims, and it's imperative that we shine that light on those issues, and we speak on behalf and for and with these victims. Unfortunately, it's so sad that Aggie has lost her beautiful daughter, and this shouldn't be happening.
No,
this simply should not be happening.
And I really hope this time, because we have heard before, we're going to do something, there's going to be a review, there's going to be an urgent review, and often nothing eventuates. I'm glad you're passionate about victims and you're in the Victorian Parliament getting it done. Thania Maxwell, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you, Rita. My pleasure.